America is the major obstacle to one world government. And you can't bring us into alignment militarily. We're much too powerful. You have to try to destroy us from within. This has been going on for a long time. This is not a new phenomenon. All of these things are happening, and it's intentional. There are people who are behind it. And what we have to get the American people to realize is that we are in a war here. Every one of us is a soldier in this battle. Are we going to capitulate to the forces that want to control and manipulate us and put us at each other's throats by driving wedges between us on the basis of race, age, income, gender, political ideology, religion? Or are we going to stand up as Americans and realize that united, we are invincible?
Well, hello there. A lot to get to today. Before I do all that, I want to tell you about something very special. I know I teased this yesterday and probably Monday, but on Friday, we've got a special interview with President Trump. Now, it's more than that. There is a big project that I've been working on that I'm going to tell you about on Friday. Actually, I'll probably tell you a little bit about it tomorrow because I want to prime you for this. But we are going to air an interview with Trump on Friday that you're going to want to see. So it's always important to hit that notification button and subscribe so that you don't miss it, especially heading into the weekend. But Trump will be with us Friday, and we will give light to this project that I've been teasing you about. It's so cool. I'm so excited about it. And I think you will be too. So let's just make sure I tell you that. Tomorrow, obviously, the big panel show, as we do on Thursdays. Always fun. I love that part of the week, just to get so many different perspectives. And anyway, always feel free to join us at 6:00 for the premiere. And that way we can interact back and forth in the chats, etc. I told you about a couple elections that were going on, so let me give you the quick little recap here. Oklahoma, Tom Cole, who is the congressman there that now heads the Appropriations Committee. Back in the day when I got into politics, if you were the head of the Appropriations Committee, you were like a political god, right? I mean, you brought home the bacon to your district. It was very powerful. This guy found himself in a very, very heated primary. And there was a lot of concern about how he would do because, you know, it's not just winning or losing. It's do you fend people off and make sure no one wants to come for you ever again? He did that very effectively. Tom Cole in Oklahoma, that's an easy one. In Virginia, Hung Cao, retired Navy captain, former EOD guy. We'll have him on at some point. He won decisively, 60-something%, 4 other challengers in that race to take on Senator Tim Kaine, the former governor there in Virginia. And look, as Virginia gets more competitive, and we've talked about this race could definitely end itself up on the radar screen if he can raise the money. Great candidate. Great story about coming here and, you know, his military career and his desire to serve. Ran for Congress last cycle, very effective. And I think that he is going to impress a lot of people. Then in that much-watched 5th district, you remember like last week, we had John McGuire on, former Navy SEAL, continuing with the Navy theme. Trust me, I didn't plan this. This just happens to be Virginia, and I happen to live there, so sorry. Well, McGuire is clinging to a 300-vote lead over incumbent Congressman Bob Good. Good, as you may know, chairman of the House Freedom Caucus, but Kevin McCarthy, who he voted to oust, had thrown a ton of money in this race, backing different super PACs, et cetera. And President Trump, who he felt Good, quote, and this is his quote, not mine, stabbed him in the back, came out all for him. Good had McGuire had Marjorie Taylor Greene and a lot of other people come in for him. This, I got to be honest with you, they thought this thing was going to be a blowout. Not a blowout, but that McGuire was well on path to just, you know, to take him out. But Good, here's the thing. He's got a big base at Liberty University, and they came out strong for him, according to some of the results that I looked at last night. But he's clinging, McGuire is, to a 300-plus vote lead. That's obviously something that's going to watch. But I think that McGuire should feel good today. Texted him early this morning and say, man, you know, not exactly a landslide, but a win's a win, right? Anyway, that's what's happening. That's a safe seat. So assuming that McGuire keeps this, he is slated. He will replace Bob Good next year. I don't think he's going to face a ton of competition in the general election. So he holds on to this. John McGuire, current state senator of Virginia, former Navy SEAL, is going to become the next congressman from the 5th District of Virginia. And I think for Trump, that's a big win on the endorsement front, because it just shows how powerful that endorsement is over incumbency, which, is no small feat. When you're an incumbent, that's a lot of advantages that you have. And obviously, McGuire has seemingly overcome them to take the lead. I do want to get to the debt after our conversation with Dr. Ben Carson. It is Juneteenth. I want to talk to him about the black vote. Oh, by the way, I heard he might be up for vice president. You think I'm going to ask him about that? Yeah, I'm going to ask him. So if you want to know whether Ben Carson is being vetted and interested in being vice president, stick around. I'm going to ask him that. And then after the conversation, I do want to talk to you a little bit about the debt, because it is not an issue that is huge. Remember we talked to Eric Hovde the other day from Wisconsin, who has made this a big deal, and God bless him for doing it, because the debt is now, the new numbers out yesterday, the U.S. national debt is projected to balloon to $50 trillion in a decade. $50 trillion. I mean, it's inconceivable what that is. And we're just doing more to add to it. Here's the thing. The federal government's costs on interest are expected to be a greater share of GDP than at any point since the CBO began reporting in 1940. What does that mean? It means that the interest alone is crowding out everything else. Just making that interest payment means it's crowding out defense and education, all these other things. It's like the credit card payment you get at some point when you look at what it costs just to pay that every month, never mind the principal. And that's what we're doing. We're crowding out the principal and just paying more and more interest because we keep borrowing. We're not stopping, and we're not even close. The debt is the accumulation of the deficits year after year. We're not even close, and no one cares. Frankly, the Republicans have gotten just as bad as the Democrats. I'll talk to you a little bit afterwards, because Biden's policies, everything he's doing, these student loan stuff, that's where it's headed. So when he talks about wiping it away, it's not wiped away. It's just kicked down the can. All right. I want to get to Ben Carson, talk to him about so much that's going on in the campaign right now. He was at Turning Point in Detroit with Donald Trump. Get his take on that. As I said, get his take on being VP. Before I do that, though, I do want to talk to you. I tell you all the time about the debt, the spending. Well, the other big thing on the spending front is, I've told you, the Democrats spent billions of dollars on more IRS agents, 50,000 of them. And these guys aren't sitting around twiddling their thumbs. Maybe they are a little bit, but they found time to send out 5 million pay up notices. What does that mean? Well, since the pandemic, there's a lot of people, for a variety of reasons. Maybe they didn't have the money, maybe some business issues, personal business, whatever, couldn't pay their taxes, didn't pay their taxes. The IRS is now coming. They got all these new agents, and they're just sending out and churning out letters saying, you owe us money. We're coming to get it. 10,000, 10 million, we don't care. Personal, business, we don't care. We're going to get our money. Before you talk to anyone from the IRS, if they call you, knock on the door, send you a letter, call my friends at Tax Network USA, 1-800-245-6000. Better yet, go to tnusa.com/Sean Spicer. tnusa.com/Sean Spicer. These guys have a ton of experience, have gotten back more than $1 billion for your clients, for their clients. You do not want to talk to the IRS alone. Call my friends at Tax Network USA, or better yet, go to tnusa.com/Sean Spicer and talk to them before you ever talk to anyone from the IRS. But there is someone that I want to talk to right now, Dr. Ben Carson. You may remember him. He's world renowned for the guy that actually separated conjoined twins. I mean, that blows my mind. He was the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development for all 4 years of Trump. Really led the way on that front. A lot of great accomplishments there. He is the founder of the American Cornerstone Institute, which is doing great work helping with this. They got a little Patriots project that they're doing. They do this thing called Executive Branch for America, which is training people to come serve in the administration so that the learning curve, if you just, hey, I want to join the next administration, is less steep. They're training people on what it's like, what you need to get ready. How do you find a job? How do you prepare? Great work at the American Cornerstone Institute that he's doing. And he's got a brand new book out called The Perilous Fight, Overcoming Our Culture's War on the American Family. Oh, and by the way, a lot of people say that he might be Donald Trump's pick for vice president. Let's ask him himself. Dr. Carson. Hey, Dr. Carson, thanks for joining us here on Juneteenth.
Hey, delighted to be with you. Thank you.
You know, let me just start with, I was going to let's go back to a couple days. President's in Detroit. I know you got to join him. Tell me what you guys did while you had the opportunity to be with him.
Well, I spoke to the audience, talked about my roots growing up in Detroit and how Detroit gets a bad rap, just like President Trump gets a bad rap. And I went through the list of reasons why those were bad raps, and they're not true. And I found a lot of people when I was growing up in Detroit who had solid conservative values, who encouraged me to work hard, talked about climbing the ladder of opportunity. It wasn't all people, looking for somebody to give them something. And I got a good value system from that. And by the same token, President Trump gets a terrible rap. People saying just the most awful things about him, which are not true. And they know they're not true. But they figure if they say them enough, people will begin to believe them.
So one of the things that's been going on, I know you responded to a tweet the other day from the White House, but let me just start with this. I mean, the White House and the Biden campaign are clearly concerned about their standing among the Black community. So I know what the polls say. What do you see? What do you hear, and why?
Well, I get to travel all over the country. And first of all, I have an awful lot of Black people who come up to me in the airport and say, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for being a voice of reason. Because people are feeling it. It doesn't matter whether you're Black, white, Asian, Hispanic, whatever. You're still feeling it when you go to the grocery store. You're still feeling it when you go to the gas pump. You're still feel it when you open your mail and you see those utility bills. But you're also noticing that you don't feel safe walking down the streets of the city or even in your own neighborhood anymore. And you wonder about all these people who are coming across our border and how they are not only impacting your safety, but your economy. All of these things are impinging upon anybody who thinks for themselves. The only people who really are still being fooled are the ones who follow hook, line, and sinker, the things put out by those who are the status quo and want to keep things the same.
So, last time, according to the exit polls, Trump got about 8%. Now he's, in the low 20s. Do you think that's pretty much where it stands? And do you think that that's a number that can grow, or is that a significant number in itself and likely to stay around there?
Well, that's a very significant number, but I think it's going to continue to grow, across all demographics, because the American people are not stupid. See, that is the assumption of the left, that the people are stupid and that you can tell them anything. Some of the things that Biden has done on video recently.
Members of Congress and Homeland Security Secretary, I'm not sure we're going to introduce you all the way. But all kidding aside, Secretary Miller.
They sit there and say, well, that's not really true. That's not happening. They're manipulating the AI and all this kind of stuff. People are not stupid. And they realize that we have a tremendous blessing by being citizens of this country. The freedoms that we enjoy are hard fought, and they're seeing how those can disappear. They see how a government can get so big that it starts imposing its will on the people. Instead of allowing market forces and the free market to determine where we're going, we have people in the government who claim that they're very, very smart and that they know where things should go. And that's why you all should drive electric vehicles. Never mind the fact that we don't have the infrastructure to support it. Never mind that we haven't decided what we're going to do with the batteries. Never mind any of those things. We know what's best. And you have to be pretty dull to believe that.
All right, folks, I hate to interrupt this conversation with Dr. Carson, but I want to tell you about my friend, Leo Grillo. If you're a watcher of the show, you know who I'm talking about. Leo founded Delta Rescue If you go to deltarescue.org, you can see what I'm talking about, all the great work. Leo founded this no-kill sanctuary for animals of all sorts, dogs, cats, animals, it doesn't matter. He wants to take care of them, give them a sanctuary for life. That means he doesn't kill them. No one kills them. They take care of them. It's the opposite of a shelter where sometimes they have to euthanize them. He wants to make sure that they come, they roam freely, they get the care, the nutritional, the veterinarian care that they need for life, that there's nothing to worry about. And the only way that this all works is when we help Leo Grillo out and go to deltarescue.org, check out the work that they're doing, and then consider a contribution. 50, 100, $1,000, whatever you can afford. Please do that so that he can continue the great work of Delta Rescue. More importantly, Leo really wants this to be an enduring mission. He wants to make sure that the work of Delta Rescue, and look, if you're an animal lover, you know what I'm talking about. You just don't want to have to think about what happens, right? So think about going to the estate planning section of deltarescue.org and making Delta Rescue part of your legacy as well, so that Leo can make sure that the work that they're doing at Delta Rescue goes on for decades and generations. Please go to deltarescue.org, check it out, look at the videos, look at the estate planning gift kit, think about a gift, help keep this mission going. Thank you. All right, now back to the conversation. It's funny, when you hear the left talk about it, they look at the Black community in a very monolithic way. They talk about the Black vote and the shift. I've always believed, kind of to your point about, Asians and Hispanics and women. It's like, if you do that, you're missing the point that not every person whose skin color is Black is going to say, God, these are the only things I care about. I mean, I think they face the same concerns and trials and tribulations that so many of us face. Absolutely. When we go to the grocery store or the gas station, or whether or not their kid's school is failing or not.
Well, I think one of the things that makes Donald Trump attractive to minorities is the fact that he believes that a rising tide lifts all boats. He's not going to pick this group and say, we're going to do this for you and this for you, and at the expense of this group because they had the advantage before. I mean, that is just so anti-American, antithetical to the very things that Dr. King advocated for. And I think people appreciate the fact that you have somebody who's going to be just and fair all the way around.
The Biden-Harris team tried to take a swipe at Trump, who is reaching out to the Black community. As you know, he's gone to the South Bronx, he's gone to Detroit, and they took a swipe at him. And then you responded and said, under President Trump, Black unemployment was at historic lows, while Black home ownership was the highest in our country's history. Black businesses, especially Black women-owned businesses, flourished. As they say in Texas, Biden-Harris is all hat and no cattle.
That's exactly right. All you have to do is observe what's going on. You don't have to be a great philosopher. All you have to do is look and see what's going on. And the nice thing, of course, is we've had these two administrations juxtaposed right next to each other. You don't have to think back 20 or 30 years and try to figure anything out. It's patently obvious to anybody who's observing. Objective.
So that being said, it's interesting. We have this discussion about the Jewish community. And again, they're not monolithic, but you look at what's happening with Hamas and Israel and you go, considering how Biden has treated Israel and Netanyahu, whatever, you got to wonder why the numbers are what they are, right? And I look at the Black community, and to your point, you couldn't be, this isn't a hypothetical. 4 years of Trump, 3.5 years of Biden. You either agree that the numbers are what they are, that home ownership and unemployment were where they are. Why isn't it higher? I look at that and say, if I were any individual, given the comparison, if you're looking at two products, say this one's better for me, better bang for its buck, if you will. I kind of go, okay, but at some point you wonder, what is it that's attractive to Biden if you're Black?
I don't know. I really don't know, but that's because I have a tendency to open my eyes and think. I grew up in Detroit, and I spent time in Boston and New Haven and Ann Arbor, Baltimore. All of these are very liberal places, and they had liberal outlooks. But once I started opening my ears and listening to people like Ronald Reagan, I said, that actually makes sense. And he sounds a whole lot like my mother. And I started thinking for myself, and just asking what makes sense? What makes sense for you? Do I want to be a victim, or do I want to take advantage of all the incredible opportunities that exist around me and move up the ladder of opportunity? I decided on the latter course.
But don't you think, I mean, the thing to answer my own question a little bit, and you see this with young people, where Biden's goal is, what can I give you to endear you to me, right? So I'm going to wipe out your student loan. Well, if I'm young and have a boatload of a debt, I think to myself, hey, that's not bad. If I go with this guy, that's not a bad deal. If you're in this country illegally, and Biden's saying, I'm going to make you a citizen. I'm going to not kick you out. I'm not going to send you back. That endears you a little. And there is something to be said for the fact that this administration is trying to figure out, how can we give you something that kind of makes you indebted to us, or believe that it will go away if you don't stay with us?
Except that a lot of those young people are smart. And they're smart enough to realize that our national debt is growing at a rapid rate. It's predicted to be at $50 trillion a decade from now. Can you imagine what the service on that debt is? It's going to be the major expense of the government, is paying the service on that debt. And whose check is that going to come out of? Those very same young people.
Yeah, but look, you of all people know about brains. I mean, my goodness, you've spent more time dealing with the intricacies of people's brains. And I can tell you that even for a diehard conservative, I think a lot of people would say, hey, I'll tell you what, I'm going to wipe out your student debt right now, here today, or in a generation, the debt's going to be horrible. 90% of people, I got to think, are saying, I'll take the immediate gratification of having my debt wiped out, and little Johnny can worry about the generational problem of the debt.
Unfortunately, I don't know if it's 90%, but it's a lot of people.
Right. Yeah.
Just think about the here and now and don't think about the future. But aren't we fortunate that there were a lot of people who were here before we were here, who did think about us and who did think about our future, and who were willing to make sacrifices so that it would be good? And maybe it's our turn to step up now.
You've got this another great book out, The Perilous Fight. In the book, you talk about divorce rates, erosion of traditional marriage, the rise of radical ideologies. What is causing this, in your opinion?
I think the fact that we, and I say we, I'm talking about America, is the major obstacle to one world government. And you can't bring us into alignment militarily. We're much too powerful. So you have to try to destroy us from within. This has been going on for a long time. This is not a new phenomenon. And as I say in the book, if you look back at the congressional record, January the 10th, 1963, more than 60 years ago, you'll see where Congressman Herlong of Florida read in the 45 goals of communism in America. It's all the stuff that you see happening right now to erode our moral foundation. Taking God out of everything, gaining control of the school system so you can indoctrinate the kids, gaining control of Hollywood and the news media so you can manipulate the population, making sexual immorality normal, natural, and healthy, diminishing the role of the family, enhancing the role of government. All of these things are happening, and it's intentional. There are people who are behind it. And what we have to get the American people to realize is that we are in a war here. Every one of us is a soldier in this battle. Are we going to capitulate to the forces that want to control and manipulate us and put us at each other's throats by driving wedges between us on the basis of race, age, income, gender, political ideology, religion? Or are we going to stand up as Americans and realize that united, we are invincible?
But so what is it that, I mean, I look at so many of the things that you address in the book, and it for a while, I feel like we were on a path to acknowledge something like fatherlessness. The idea that not having a father in the home is a problem. It's going to yield certain outcomes. Now it's become a stigma. If you bring this up, you're a bad person. So many of the things that I think we're on a path to address in terms of strong families and the importance of a two-parent family are now taboo. How dare you bring that up? You're offending somebody who might not have a father in the home. You're offending the LGBTQ community when you address this. The reality is the data is clear about some of these things. And yet I look at so many aspects of our society and say, it's almost like modern day smoking. I mean, the Surgeon General was talking about that yesterday with social media. We know what's right and wrong, and yet we continue to choose the wrong path.
Well, as I talk about in the book, both the liberal and the conservative think tanks and study organizations all come up with the same conclusion, that children who are raised in a traditional nuclear family, two-parent family, do much better on every level, everything that you can measure. And yet we find ourselves in a situation where you turn your television on, and what do they present? Within the first 5 minutes, the alternative to the traditional nuclear family as not only acceptable, but maybe as preferable. And we're being peppered with that. Our children are being peppered with that all the time. And then the whole concept of truth. You hear people saying today, this is my truth. That's your truth. Whatever happened to the truth?
Right. I mean, it is. So, and this is, there was something that I've been dying to ask you as a doctor, because this gets to this truth and government thing. And I know you were the head of HUD, but you are a renowned doctor. And so this may not be something that really you got into in government, but I'm dying to ask you, I feel like more and more we're finding out about food and drugs that are coming into our lives and maybe aren't the best for us. So, for example, there are a lot of foods and dyes and things that are banned in Europe and other countries that we permit here in this country. And I start to think to myself, I've always assumed that our government, the CDC, the Health and Human Services, HHS, and all these organizations, the FDA, were there to protect us. And then I'll start reading a study that says, these PFASs, the forever chemicals, have been in our foods, in our products. And I'm thinking to myself, I saw a whole thing the other day about non-skid pans, right? Which I thought were great because things don't stick to them and you can, make eggs and all sorts of things. And it made your life easier. And now I'm hearing, well, gosh, you're actually putting things into your body, these forever chemicals. Why is it that, where is the role of the government that was supposed to be protecting us?
The love of money is the root of all evil.
That's it, isn't it?
Yeah, it's all about money. And you can pay for pretty much anything you want in this country, and that's a real problem. And that comes back to our leadership. And unfortunately, it's on both sides. Money corrupts tremendously. A lot of people who come to Washington have very good intentions, but I can tell you, from the time that I spent there are a lot of temptations, and many people fall victim to them, and it's a problem.
I'm glad I don't mean to say it this way, but I'm glad you said that because it's so true. So many people go. I look at all these people who are lobbying for TikTok, and I'm thinking, this is a organization or a platform that is horrible to our kids, controlled by a government that wants to destroy us. But because they're willing to pay some of these people in the U.S. great deals of money to lobby government, they're willing to accept it. I want to talk about government for a second. You get batted around as a VP nominee. Politico had a story yesterday saying that there are 8 candidates that Trump is considering that are being vetted. So I'll ask it this way, because I've heard your answers in the past on, have you gotten a package to be vetted by the Trump campaign?
I don't know.
You don't know. You might want to check your mail.
There are conversations that...
There are conversations. Okay, so you've had conversations with them.
Yes, there are conversations that occur.
So, all right, so my next question is this. Let's just assume, I'll cut through the chit-chat here for a second. If you were selected, Are you, in your opinion, it's not just the vice president, but part of the reason that people select vice presidents is because they believe that they are ready to assume the presidency. God forbid something happened to the president. Do you feel that you are ready to be president of the United States should that opportunity for whatever reason arise?
I think with the help of God, one nation under God, we can make this work. No question about it. And it's a matter, the presidency is not a matter of someone being all powerful and almighty. It's a matter of someone knowing how to use that power appropriately and how to surround themselves with the correct people to be able to get things done. Recognizing that it's not about a person, it's about a philosophy.
And if offered, would you accept?
I would give it prayerful consideration. The only thing I can commit to definitely is that I'm going to work very hard to try to save this country. And whether that's done from inside the government or outside the government, that is my commitment.
If I can just put in a good pitch here, it's a really cool house that you get, nice pool. You don't have a ton of visitors. I think it's a great job. I think you get a great house. So I'm pro. If you get the invitation and you're hesitating at all, please call me. I'll talk you into it. The last thing I just want to ask, though, is if for some reason that didn't work out, you were there for all 4 years of Trump. By and large, very well respected, lot of accomplishments under your leadership. Would you want to go back in another capacity?
Again, I will pray about it, but recognize that right now I'm heading up the American Cornerstone Institute, which is growing rapidly and having very good effect, particularly our Little Patriots program, our Executive Branch for America program, some of the other things that we're using to disseminate the knowledge. And that's something that needs to continue well beyond my lifetime. So we're very much committed to that and using that to help save our country as well.
Yeah, a lot of great work being done at American Cornerstone Institute. Dr. Ben Carson, I appreciate you spending time with us on this busy day. Thanks a lot, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Sean, for being a patriot.
You bet. All right, what a great conversation with Dr. Ben Carson. There's so many aspects of things that he touched on that I think are worthy of follow-up, right? The thing that's so interesting, first and foremost, that I talked to him about the black vote, right, is how the left and the media approach not just the black vote, but all of these different constituencies that are key, right? You think about this. The Democratic Party is built on coalitions, right? It's not like, from the conservative standpoint, we're lower government, less government, lower taxes. We want to bring anybody in. Doesn't matter who you are. You believe in the philosophies of a strong defense, lower government, less taxes, then you're in. They want to cater to everyone. It's a little sprinkle for everybody. We'll suck up to students by giving them free college and other little goodies. We'll suck up to this group by giving them this. There's no general philosophy. It's a coalition of randoms. And they think of these groups like that. What do we just need to give you? What do we need the government to do for you? What do we need to do to make sure that you are attached to us, that you're committed to us, that we create that lifelong bond? They don't want people off welfare. If you're off welfare, if you create your own business and work for yourself, well, then you're not going to be attached to us. They want you to stay tethered to the government. And then they get to say, guess what? We control the government and we want more going your way. Think about what they're doing with folks that are entering the country illegally. We'll protect you. We'll put you on a path to citizenship. The other party will do this. There is this thing. And I think because of Trump policies, which is what Dr. Carson was talking about, that is the growth. That's why you see what's happening. And I think he was absolutely right about that. And going from 8 to 20%. Look, I've told you this before, but go back to my favorite statistic. In Michigan in 2016, 10,703 votes. So if you can take that black vote in Detroit, in Michigan, and make inroads with it, and they're already worried about like the union vote and all these other things, but just think the black vote. And you start to go from 8 to 20, think about, that's what, maybe 10,000 votes right there. Boom. And you think about how that plays out in Georgia and like Atlanta, Milwaukee, in Wisconsin, all these big cities, these urban cities where the Democrats are relying on a huge get out the vote effort for minorities. If either people sit on their hands, because that's the other thing. It's not that Trump needs to get them all. He just needs a lot of people to say, I'm just not going to vote. I don't like Biden. I'm not going out there. I don't like either. That benefits Trump. So this is a big issue for them and they know it. And they're worried because when you look at the closeness, think about Arizona and Georgia, Wisconsin, 0.22%, 0.44 last time. These are big things and they have to worry about them. As I said, it's not just winning them over. It's if enough people from a key constituency that the left needs says, I just don't like him anymore. He didn't perform. He's too old, whatever. Who cares? I'm not voting. That's almost as good as, it's sort of like, in baseball, they say a walk's as good as a run. I mean, sitting on your hands is almost as good as a vote. Deprives them of one. So that's a big deal. All right. A couple other things I wanted to touch on. I told you about at the beginning, but I want to tell you one other thing that came out last night that I thought was interesting. The Trump gag order. You remember that from the New York case, which I thought was insane. I talked to Alan Dershowitz about this. The Trump campaign was like, okay, court's over. You guys gave us your verdict. We're awaiting sentencing. Why can't we talk about witnesses and whatever anymore? No, the appeals court denied it. Denied it for what? This is the story. New York's top court dismisses Trump's appeal of gag order in hush money case. Why? There's no case anymore. Why are you doing this? It's simple, folks. It's simple. This is all I've told you about. It's like the moniker, convicted felon. We're just doing stuff to stop you. Think about this. On its face, you have a court case that's over. The jury has been dismissed. They're done. What if you went full on against the jury? And I'm not recommending that in any way, shape, or form. What harm? They're done. They can't come back. It's not going to change the outcome. That was the goal of the gag order. The judge, the case is over. They're just awaiting sentencing. If Trump wants to attack them, maybe that might be the smartest move for a guy who's about to get sentenced for him. But what does that do to the case? The case is done. We're awaiting sentencing. They're keeping that in place because they wanted to affect the election. It's the same thing with the convicted felon moniker. This is what's going on. I mean, on its face, you don't have to be a lawyer to understand this. You're keeping a gag order in place for a case that's over. Why? Why? Answer that question. You can't. It makes no sense because if there was an issue, they can't bring the jury back, right? It's just not, that's not how the system works. So the jury's gone. They've been dismissed by the judge. So keeping a gag order in place to not attack a jury that has no role anymore makes zero sense. Unless you just want to keep gagging him so that A, you can impose more fines, B, you've got another reason to tack on sentencing, or C, you just want to hope that he abides by it and then gag him from talking about it because you don't want him defending himself and talking about how ridiculous this case was. But that's what's going on. The term lawfare gets used over and over again. Here's another prime example. Anyway, I just wanted to share that with you because I thought it was a big deal. Also yesterday, I told you about this plan that Biden administration announced, immediate asylum, 500,000 people they're giving a path to citizenship, right? On the same day, we see this thing, migrant suspect in sexual assault of 13-year-old girl in New York Park, now in NYPD custody. And I'm not tying that group, don't get me wrong. But instead of focusing on the border where we have issues, drugs coming over, terrorists coming over, criminals coming over, right? That are affecting our lives here. They're more worried about getting these other people on a path to citizenship. That's their priority. The next time they tell you, look at where their effort is. You know, when we were talking about campaigns with Jim McLaughlin, you can always tell a campaign's priority where they put their time and their money. Well, it's not that different with the policies. The president wants to tell you he cares about this. Where's his time and effort being spent? Not in securing the border, not in stopping the drugs, not in stopping the terrorists, but in actually giving these people who've come into the country illegally a path to citizenship. Those are his priorities. That's unquestionable. Yesterday, that's where they spent their time, championing this. And here we go with another example of another American citizen, a young American, 13-year-old girl, being harmed by somebody brought into the country illegally. No penalties, nothing to do to stop it, no consolation, no proclamations from the White House about how outraged we are and how we're trying to stop. They don't care. They ignore it. And if it wasn't for a couple organizations, specifically the New York Post, no one would cover that. You're not seeing that in the New York Times or on NBC News. They don't want you to know about it. Guys, I've said this before, but there's a reason independent media is crucial. And the reason it's crucial is because we are covering things and talking to people that they won't. If you watched NBC News or read the New York Times, everything is great. Biden's doing an amazing job. He's working hard for you and getting results. Trump is a convicted criminal that's going to continue to do bad things and undermine democracy. That's what they would have you believe, despite the facts. And enough people are searching out the facts, they're finding out what's happening. By the way, as I mentioned to you, I want to tell you as a reminder, set those DVRs because Trump will be with us on Friday for an interview that I had with him just a little while ago. I'd mentioned the debt. I want to tell you a couple things because, as I said, there's a great chart that we're going to put up. $50 trillion. This is it from yesterday. The Congressional Budget Office says that the federal deficit will be $1.9 trillion for FY 2024. $400 billion worse than it estimated in February. Think about that. Just a few months ago, they thought it was going to be $1.5 trillion. That's bad enough. Now it's going to be almost $2 trillion. Hey, our bad. We're off by about, a third? Is that it? CBO says that the federal government will want a $24 trillion deficit over the next decade. And here's the key thing, by the way. So it's headed towards 50 in a decade, okay? We will then accumulate that much debt. Why? Here's the thing. This is from John Bresnahan at Punchbowl News. CBO says Biden college loan forgiveness program, Ukraine, Israel, Indo-Pacific aid, bank failures, and soaring Medicare costs, why deficit is much higher than previous estimate. These are all Biden policies. This is him. You hear him talking about this. In fact, didn't he tell you he was cutting the deficit? Not true, by the way. They love that talking point. Think about how many, this is at 4 months, February to March to April to May, June. I mean, we're 4 months and it's gone up $400 billion. The estimate. So guess what? You know where that's going. It's like if you ever built a house, you talk to the contractor. It's not going down. It's just going to continue to get worse. And you heard Ben Carson talk about this. We're literally just going, you pay. These kids, we're going to wipe out your college debt. Where do you think it goes? It's not a magic trick. Poof. It didn't just go bye-bye. We kicked it down the can. And by the way, kicked the can down the road. And guess what? It gets worse because we add interest to that. So we take the money from these kids, kick that can down the road, and then it becomes more expensive because we're not paying it off. So they just add interest and interest and interest, and it gets more expensive. That's what's happening. It's unbelievable. Anyway, the last thing I want to tell you about is we saw this, I keep talking about the Biden policies. Foreign policy is never a big issue in elections for the most part. But there was this thing overnight that I just wanted to flag where it says Russia and North Korea signed partnership deal that appears to be the strongest since the Cold War. Just think about that. For 4 years, we had peace and stability around the world. They were worried about Trump. They were worried about him. They didn't know what he was going to do. We were, exhibiting strength. They feared us. And now our enemies are ganging up, not for good reason. That's what's happening under this administration. It continues to get worse and worse and worse domestically and abroad. So much is at stake. We cannot afford another 4 years of Joe Biden. Just can't do it. Explain to people this when we talk to them. All right. Big show headed your way tomorrow. I love the panel show. And then Friday, as I said, President Trump is going to be here. I'm going to reveal the big project. I might lean into it a little tomorrow. This is huge. I think you are definitely going to love it. And I'm going to obviously let you see it first. So hit the notification button, subscribe to YouTube and Rumble. Make sure you're going to Apple Podcasts, iHeart, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts as well. And again, as I said before, please continue to hit all platforms. It doesn't mean you have to listen to them all, but it helps us tremendously. Watch us on the First Every Night channel, 347 on DirecTV. We'll see you back here tomorrow on the Sean Spicer Show. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.